King Solomon of Israel was known as one of the greatest leaders of the ancient world. Renowned for his wealth and wisdom, leaders throughout the entire world flocked to his side to gain counsel, and so I made it my duty to study him. If I was truly to replicate this great man, I would have to fully commit.
In Wisdom of Solomon from Fun Hill Games, players take on the role of governors during the reign of King Solomon in Israel's Golden Age. So each player seeks to gain favor by bringing wealth into the nation of Israel, as well as constructing the temple that Solomon has been tasked with building. As far as the actions in the game, it's pretty standard worker placement fare, but it's got a spattering of really unique mechanics that I thought were very intriguing. For starters, the building cards. As an option on their turn, a player can choose to build a building. Instead of paying money to simply buy the building, they have to pay the correct number of resources, and in doing so, they get favor points. Now, these favor points are not only victory points at the end of the game, but they're also the currency within the game. So having the correct resources to build these buildings gets them more money that they can use to buy other resources. But more importantly, it's going to give them a bonus throughout the rest of the game. Now, building these buildings are incredibly helpful because you are placing them in front of you and you're helping to build your economic engine as the game goes on. But it doesn't stop there. The entire second half of the map has this Nation of Israel map, and it's sectioned off into different areas that give different resources. But essentially, they are action spots that you can place to get additional resources, whatever that may be depicted on the board. Now, at the start of the game, they are available for everyone. It's a complete smorgasbord. When you build a building, you have the option of placing one of your cute little... everybody's got cute little houses. You place a cute little house into the proper square, and all of a sudden, that area is closed off to everyone except for you, or anyone else that happens to have another cute little house in that section. Now, in addition to that cute little house, you also get to place a road on the border between the area that you've just built. Now, that road will lead to another resource, meaning that when you place your worker where your house is, you also get any resource that a road is touching. Now, you can continue this chain by building more buildings and building more houses. And as you place a single worker onto one of your houses, if you've jerry-rigged this chain well enough, you can rack in a lot of different resources from one simple move. Now, you're creating this economic engine because as you create this chain that brings in a ton of resources for yourself, you then can either use those resources to build a temple, to sell off and get more points. And so you can see how this give and take between points and money and resources and goods, how that goes back and forth. And while it is probably one of the most intriguing aspects of this game, it's also one of the most confusing, which is really unfortunate. We frequently had to go back to the rulebook and check to make sure we were doing everything correctly, and honestly, sometimes we weren't. There's a hierarchy between which roads you actually get resources from and how the chaining works, and once we got going, it did make sense. It just was not an easy rule set to remember, and one that could have really benefited from having a rules reference, as one of the players suggested. But that's not to detract from the fact that it was a really cool idea. And once we got over some of the hurdles, it made sense. It just was a little bit more difficult to grasp. Now, albeit fiddly but interesting is okay. But for me, the number one most interesting part about this game was the economic system. Now, I've alluded to the fact that the points in the game are also the currency, and that you have to spend that currency to gain goods, and you use the goods to gain more currency. And as confusing and counterintuitive as that might sound, it works really well. And one of the reasons for that is because there's this closed economy. The goods are sectioned off to the side of the board, and there's a supply. But that supply is constantly being brought into the course of the game. It's being brought into the market. Players then have to interact with the market. Now, sure, you could use your network to gain a lot of different goods. But once the supply for those goods runs out, that's it. You could be sitting on a literal gold mine in the game, but if there's no gold in supply, it's going to do you no good. You then have to go to the market to bargain for cheap prices on gold, and if it ever comes back into the supply, you can quickly use your gold mine to bring them back in, and then sell those to get points. You're literally buying low and selling high, which is really cool in and of itself, because you've got this push and pull of what the economy and what the market's doing. It's not simply everyone working for themselves, but because the resources are so limited, using that market is vital to having a winning strategy for the game, and using those resources wisely, because you have to use them to build buildings, which, as I've said, you use to get more resources. It's this giant circle that all works far better than I anticipated. So it's this two-part economic system. The first being the currency, which are also the points of the game. These favor points are used to buy goods, which is the second aspect of the economy. The goods are used to buy buildings, which give you favor points. They're also used in building the temple, which, when you build a temple, you get bonus points at the end of the game. The two are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they are symbiotic in nature in that you need one to do the other successfully. And really, that's where this game shines, is in its economic engine. There's one thing I need to mention. The art. Look, to put it bluntly, I'm not a fan of the art. And in particular, the graphic design choices made in the layout of the board. If we're playing a game in which players are literally bringing in wealth to create the greatest nation of the time, why then do I feel like I'm playing on a small amusement park map? And I'm not talking Disneyland map. Those ones are really nice. Now, this is a prototype copy, so I can only hope that the finished version is going to improve on some of this, because really some of those spaces are really small when dealing with the market, and it just doesn't look nice. And then there's the art direction, specifically the fortune cards and the building cards. The problem is it's like there were two different art directions, and rather than pick one and commit to it, they went two separate directions. And look, plain and simple, I had fun with this game. It's one that I enjoyed the theme, I enjoyed the interesting mechanics, and I was able to get over some of the aspects that I didn't find all that intriguing. So, if the theme alone intrigues you, look into this. I mean, if this is the type of theme that can get people into their first worker placement game, I am 100% for it, because it offers pretty standard worker placement fare and throws in some good concepts that can be used as a solid basis for getting into other hobby games, or even just being a staple in a family's game collection. Now for me, I really enjoyed the theme, liked the game a lot, and it's well worth taking a look.